What's up, weirdos? I'm Felicia and I like scary movies. And today I am joined by my big brother, Thomas. Hi,
Hey
Thomas.
guys.
This is going to be amazing. As you can probably tell, this is a pre recorded video, but I am alive in the chat right next to us in the future from my now, and I am talking to you. So, still hang out in the chat and all that as we go along here. But today, we're talking about The Stand, but we decided to do this collab between siblings because my brother Thomas has been furiously reading Stephen King. And I actually wanted to ask you this because I know you've been reading so much over the last year or two. Did you read Stephen King as a kid or just as an adult?
So as a kid, I've always enjoyed Stephen King through the movies and the stuff that was on TV. Obviously, he's had a big reputation in Hollywood as well as with writing books. But I haven't until recently, as an adult, started reading. The first Stephen King that I read at all was the series, the Dark Tower series, which is a 7-book series. There's actually a couple of books that he's added in
I was
after
going
the
to say,
fact.
what a place to start.
Yeah,
Like, not
so
even a one-off.
that covered a whole lot of ground. There's a lot of tie-ins there's actually a tie-in to The Stand in that series in the 4th book, Wizard and Glass, which happens to be one of my favorites. Uh, but that once I got through that series, I was hooked. I've been reading Stephen King ever since. I've covered quite a few books since then.
Nice. And I know you just said that the fourth one was your favorite of that. But do you have like a number one Stephen King right now? Or a top two maybe?
So I would have to say it is hard to like, rank them side by side. So far right now, out of all of them I've read, The Stand that we're covering today is probably my favorite. But it's very, very, very closely trailed by Pet Cemetery. I would say is the scariest. And that book I thoroughly enjoyed as well. So that was a very, very close second.
Nice. Speaking of Pet Cemetery, Toby is asleep in front of me right now. But if you hear a little dog in the background, that is my brother's beautiful Dalmatian Sadie, who just wants love. And I'm sorry, Sadie, but we'll let Thomas go back to you in a little bit. But okay, so let's go ahead and get started talking about The Stand. So to be clear, I watched only the new 2020 CBS version. I've never seen the 90s miniseries and I've never read the book. So I know the least of anyone here. Thomas has read the book, seen the CBS new one, and have you watched the one from the 90s?
So I need to rewatch that as an adult. I did see it back
I've never seen it, so
in the 90s, but I have not rewatched it, and I do have that on my list of things to do.
Okay, cool. Great. So if you don't know, The Stand is sort of a post-apocalyptic horror. It starts with a deadly pandemic, dun, 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 of a weaponized influenza that takes out most of the population of the earth. And there is only a few survivors. And they kind of gather into two groups, one being led by good and one being led by evil. And then they kind of have to fight for who's going to win. And that's kind of where I'll leave us there. And so obviously the first thing, as someone that's never read it, when I started watching it, the first thing I immediately thought of was COVID. This fast spreading disease, people are in the hospitals are overrun. I was like, wow, this is hitting so close to home. It came out in 2020. Did you have that same kind of thoughts?
Well, as far as how the pandemic ties into the series and the book, I kind of feel like maybe the current pandemic that we're going through, obviously a lot milder than what happens in the book,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, may have made them scale down um, how they tied that into the series. I kind of felt like, in the book there is a lot more emphasis on. I mean, over 99% of the population dies. And, the people, all the main characters have to go through that. They have to see their family die. They have to,
Mm-hmm.
decide to move on. And, how are we going to move forward after this devastating pandemic? And why am I still alive? Why me? Why am
Mm-hmm.
I still here? So, uh, in the series they do definitely show a little bit of that, but it's more through brief flashbacks and things like that. It doesn't have as much emphasis on that whole process like the book does.
Mm. And they made it a very graphic looking disease. Like it was very disgusting. Like lots of yellow snot and like the bulbous thing on the neck, which I was like, I wondered, and this is just a question, I don't know. Was that I wondered if that was added to kind of step it away from COVID, like the kind of physical look of it, or if that was like part of the book. It's okay if you don't remember. I know it's very specific.
Yeah, no. So that is part of it, and in the book, it is a very nasty disease.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
It's
it's disgusting.
definitely
Like I had to look away at times because I don't love like sick stuff in horror movies like that. I'm like, ah, like I'd almost rather blood.
right, right.
But it's very effective for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that was definitely a pretty accurate.
Yeah. Um, okay, so now let's just go. I want to go through some of and I have the IMDb up here. So I'm just gonna kind of read through them. But just some of the actors and like how you thought they did portraying the characters. So the big good versus evil in this is Mother Abigail Freeman, played by Whoopi Goldberg. Which, so by the way, first of all, this is kind of a star-studded cast of people. Um, like I was kind of surprised by all like the A-listers like in this miniseries. And I was like, when's the last time I saw Whoopi Goldberg in something?
Yeah, yeah. Blast from the past. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I liked her. Did you like her? I thought she was kind of like a good motherly, saintly figure.
Yeah. So she plays Abigail Fremantle's character, and the she plays the character very well. What's notable from the book and to how she portrays the character, the book describes Abigail Fremantle as very, very almost like a skeleton thin, just this woman that
Oh,
is
interesting.
108 years old, ready
Like
to, or when I
frail.
say 108, she's well over 100 years old, like obscenely old,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in that range. And basically on death's doorstep, just one breath away from dying. And so Whoopi Goldberg definitely portrays the character well. And I don't know that it's easy to just look like that. So I'm not faulting her.
Yeah. Well, either
In
way, she
any
definitely
way.
has a lot more strength than that, it seems, especially the
Right,
earlier episodes.
right, right. But she did a good job with the character, and it was great to see her on the screen again.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I feel like she never is even acting. I feel like she's just like being Whoopi Goldberg, which I always appreciate
Yeah.
as well. So next up, the evil in this. So our Randall Flagg is played by Alexander Skarsgård, And I love Skarsgårds, love them all. Love that they do horror movies. His brother, right? Bill was in it, plays Pennywise. So this family's not new to Stephen King.
Right,
But
right.
I thought he was really good in this. He's obviously very like he's so like that seductive evil, like if you think about like the snake with the apple and Eve, like he kind of feels like that, like a snake in this.
Yeah.
And I thought he was very good. Like I thought his performance was awesome.
So that is it was a great portrayal of that character. The walking man, the hard case that he has several names. Randall Flagg is his main name as that character, and that character in itself, Randall Flagg, has several different names throughout the Stephen King universe. So it is,
Oh.
yeah, it is really cool to to see his part in The Stand. Now, the as far as the actor to the role, he did a really good job. The in the book, he is the the character Randall Flagg is more of like a demon. Like he's been around
Mm,
for ages and ages, and he really feeds off of people believing in him and his ability to lead and
yes.
control their lives for their betterment. But it does. He's got this seductive side, to him, and where he's kind of flashy and attractive.
Mhm.
At the same time, he's got this really, really scary, unnerving side, that kind of just shakes people up. Like they kind of want to see what he's doing, but they don't want to get too close to him.
Mhm.
And so Lloyd's character, he picks up this guy, in prison that's locked up. Everybody's died. This guy's basically waiting to die. He's in the book. He's actually already started to eat his inmate that has died because
Yes.
that's how desperate he is.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
you don't see him do it in the series, but you see a wound on his cellmate's leg. And it's like,
right, right,
oh, you definitely did that. Okay, you
yeah,
definitely ate his leg. Okay.
right. So so he basically springs this guy from jail when he's on his last last part of life, and gives him this whole new you know position of power within the dark side. We'll just kind of
Mhm.
call it is definitely a good versus evil theme. So he is the leader of the evil.
Mhm.
And so, but even Lloyd, being his right hand man, is scared of him. He's around him at certain times, but even as it shows in the series, he doesn't. He's nervous. He just never
Mhm.
really knows. He's kind of loyal, but he's definitely unnerved by Randall Flagg.
Yeah, absolutely. And something you said that I definitely want to highlight is the idea of Randall Flagg. His power comes from people believing in him. And
Mhm.
there's definitely something, I feel like we've seen that kind of trope with a lot of supernatural creatures, even fairies, like in Peter Pan. It's like clap if you believe in fairies and they can live or whatever. um and we see that. But Stephen King, I was reading just about him with this book, also talking about like kind of politics and people and stuff like that, and the idea of like leaders. um the more power, they only have power if you give it to them, right?
Right.
If you believe in them, if you support them, then they can really do anything. And it kind of just takes can, you know, in this stand we see, and that's kind of like the idea, right? Which I thought they hit the nose a little too on the head, like in the last episode where they're like, make your stand. And it's like, I was like, I get it. But yeah, like making, so it only takes a few people to make their stand against an evil force for it to start, you know, crumbling down or whatever. But I thought that was a interesting concept.
Well, that actually reminds me of somewhat of a parallel. So the one of the things that the series does not portray as much is the military's involvement in the entire event. So, and of course, that, you know, people have to believe and understand that, you know, the military is going to continue to run and operate to follow their orders and whatnot. It does kind of, you know, go through part of that in the series, but in the book there is, you know, the military tries to contain this virus that's, you know, come out of a lab. They do try to contain it, and then it really they even try to contain whole cities, like quarantine, you know, big metropolitan areas of the U.S., kill innocent citizens. It just gets really messy.
The series like, that's a little too close to home right now. We need to cut that.
Right, and so I understand why, you know, maybe that and you know that makes sense why that might not be in the series as much. But it does kind of, the book really does kind of show that type of belief of power breaking down and what that looks like. And then also another thing that I, you know, kind of realized when you said that is the origin of the disease itself. In the series, it kind of gives credit to Randall Flagg. It shows him as the, you know, the car is pulling away, the guy has come out of the facility, he's been exposed to it, he grabs his family in the middle of the night, we got to get out of here.
Right.
Something bad has happened, you know, let's hit the road, we're just going to, you know, go as far as we can. It kind of shows him in the back, it shows a shot of the back seat. And then, you know, at one point it shows Randall Flagg back there, like, you know, he's kind of orchestrating this whole thing. And in the book, it is more of really just a human blunder, you know, that just kind of gets out and whatnot. And he takes advantage of the situation. This is a great time for him to thrive. People have gone through, you know, all kinds of craziness. So they're at a point
they're
where
vulnerable.
they're kind of willing to
they
believe.
Want leadership. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They might believe in things that they wouldn't otherwise believe in today's modern, you know, world. They've watched a lot of the technology has crumbled without people to run it. So, and another thing that does kind of, you know, show a difference from the book to the series at the end of it. The book and the series both show him to go on. He wakes up on the beach. He, you know, finds another civilization of people. They don't speak English. You know, it's like, you know, some tribe in a jungle somewhere. And
so that happens in the book.
That does, yes. So it's actually I think, you know, it's past the last chapter. I guess you call that the prologue or whatever. It's the last, the very last part at the end.
Yeah.
And so that is something that, but another part they add in a whole lot at the end, where you know, Franny and Stu go all the way back to Maine. At the book, they actually they decide to leave Boulder and they know they're going east, but they actually go back to Nebraska to Hemingford home, where Abigail Fremantle lived her whole life before she, you know, went with them to Boulder.
Sorry, I have a question. Is that okay? So in the show, they go to Nebraska, and there is a young black girl that helps save Franny, which I feel dumb for not making the connection. Is that supposed to be like the spirit of Mother Abigail?
So I can't remember the child in the book, but in the book, all the characters have the dream, and they're so they wake up in a cornfield. They're surrounded by corn, and they kind of feel this pulling in a certain direction, and they can kind of hear. So they kind of
you
go
see
through the
some of that
cornfield.
in the show.
Yeah. Right. So they open, the opening comes out to the shack that she's grown up her whole life in, and but she will give them direction of, I want you to come find me, and she kind of pulls them to her in her dreams.
That's so interesting. I didn't really make that connection of them driving back through Nebraska and actually, because they are, I mean, they're right next to a cornfield, so that makes sense that it's all like, it all kind of comes together for a minute before they move on to Maine.
In the book, they actually, when they're making their initial trek west, they are actually called, not all of them, but a good group of them are called to Hemingford home, and they meet Abigail Fremantle there, and then they take her to Boulder, Colorado, because that's where God is telling her she needs to go and take the people. So in the series, it just kind of introduces her there in Boulder, Colorado, in a home that they've got set up for her. So it doesn't necessarily, the house that they go back to, Franny falls into a well. That's not in the book.
Oh, that's not in the book. Oh, okay.
Right. So
you don't see that miracles work.
Right. So there is a little gap there where they add in the series what's not in the book. They kind of take some liberty there, and it is. I don't necessarily, the house may or may not be Abigail Fremantle's that they go back to, but obviously it is surrounded by corn. I think they're kind of trying to somewhat represent that. In the book, that house is more of like just a shack out in the middle of corn.
I see.
But either way, they go back to this house, and the part where she falls into the well, and then he has to come back and save her and all of that, and then they actually go to Maine from there. That doesn't happen in the book. In the book, it kind of cuts off. They get back to that house. They have a discussion about, we wonder if society will ever get it together. That's not it verbatim, but that's kind of what they're discussing. And then it goes to the epilogue where Randall Flagg is resurrected as, he takes a different name, Flanagan or something. I can't remember what name he takes, but he awakens on a beach, and goes into the jungle and finds a tribe of people, and starts over.
So something you mentioned that I want to kind of lead us into this next part of the conversation is the idea of God and the devil in this. Like, it feels very, even though on Wikipedia, so I mean, I don't know, on Wikipedia it said that Stephen King, when he wrote this, was looking to do kind of a Lord of the Rings thing, but in contemporary America. And maybe I can see some of that in here. But I feel like mostly I see this like kind of idea of like like dark Christianity or something, and looking at a lot of those themes through the lens of a horror writer, and because they use a lot of, I mean, pretty literal language from the Bible as well, of get thee behind me, and like whatever they say about what does he say when they're in the pool, and this is like towards the end when they're like about to die, and they say something about evil, and that's like what kind of, do you know what I'm talking about? Sorry.
I can't remember that specific instance, but the theme of good and evil, and he doesn't really take God and Satan or the devil, specifically. He more takes, again, Randall Flagg's character is he's more like a demon. He's
Yeah, that's a
been
good point.
around for for ages, and will continue to be around for ages. Abigail Fremantle is more of like a prophet. She is
Right.
a human. She's lived an extremely long time, and an obscenely long time. But she's supposed to speak for the will of God, and that is definitely a huge theme, bigger than the pandemic part of it, and all the killing and things that happen along the way to get to the stand.
Yeah. Something else that I'm just now reminded of with this like idea of like Christian themes and horror is there's kind of have you ever seen Rosemary's Baby?
I have not.
It's okay, but it's about basically a woman that gets pregnant by the devil's child. And in this we haven't gotten to these characters yet, but Nadine, played by Amber Heard in this, she has had a relationship with Randall Flagg since she was a little girl, which I thought was interesting because she's kind of the only one that has a history with this demon.
Right.
Yeah. And
So
he tells her like she's his queen and whatever, and he gets her to do all these things, and then he impregnates her with his demon baby, and that ends up not going so well for him. But that was an interesting subplot that I was surprised didn't go further. Like I was like, what is the intention of this demon baby? Like that felt like a really big thing that happened, but then it never really came back around, or like there was no words earlier in the show about him wanting to have a child. Like it seemed kind of out of nowhere for me. So I was wondering, like, is anything about him trying to have a child in the book?
So yes, that is. It does show in the series a part where she's a teenager. She's actually staying, I think, in an orphanage,
Yeah.
and the girls are playing that game, and she gets involved. That is in the book. The book definitely fills out her character more. She goes through her. She doesn't, So number one, she thinks that's kind of weird, just like all the other girls do. But she does. I mean, what can you do? This person's tagged you. They're writing stuff on the board now beyond your control. So
they chose you.
Right. So as she goes through her teenage years, for whatever reason, she never loses her virginity. She's had opportunities to, but things just never added up to that happening. And so it doesn't come right out and say it, but it is kind of the Randall Flagg kind of advertises that he's going to create this new future, and this and she's going to be his virgin bride. They're going to have a baby that could even represent like the Antichrist.
Interesting. So it's about like creating that new future, and like, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. But again, his whole power is based off of everybody around him believing in him.
Right.
So that's what he's got to have to kind of pull it off. And he there at the end, that's where he starts to stumble. People start to kind of question, and things go awry for him. But with Nadine's character, it definitely, she doesn't really have as much of a choice in the book. She more just has to kind of go with the path that's in front of her. Where in the series, it almost looks more like she's just seeing that as her calling and what she wants to do.
Yeah, and she saves the people she wants to save, like as though she has the option. Like she saves the children.
Right. So I think she wants to be a good person. She does save Joe along the way, and he is definitely got some issues. He tries to kill Larry in their first encounter with like a big butcher knife, and he doesn't. So he's untrusting of other guys. He starts kind of following with her, and she in the series it doesn't really go over this, but she actually before she decides to break off and go with Harold, like Randall Flagg, wants her to do and weaponize him. She actually kind of has a second thought about, maybe I should just get with Larry. Let's just make a little family. In the book, Larry is actually dating another woman in town at that point. He has made some passes towards her along their journey, but she's kind of, and he hadn't been heavy on it, but he just,
but she's committed to the Dark Lord, so right. she's spoken for.
Well, yeah, she's just kind of, known that she's had a lot going on. They're all having these weird dreams, and so on and so forth. But she does in the book kind of have this, questioning of, man, I could, just give up this whole dark thing and, try to live a normal life. But he turns her down. He's happy with this other girl, and and also she just kind of presses it on him, like, she shows up out of nowhere, and it makes his other girlfriend, kind of freak out. And she's like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah, because in the series they show that he does, obviously, as you said, he doesn't have that significant other in the series, but she shows up at his house basically like to have sex with him, and she says,
like desperate,
desperate, aggressive, and she says, like, if we do this, maybe he'll let me go if she's not pure anymore, I guess. Right. And that's what sort of clued that into me. And then later, of course, he says, like, you kept yourself pure for me or whatever. But yeah, she has that. They do a version of that moment where she's like, I could get out of this.
And in the book, it definitely kind of shows more that she could be a decent person. She's not necessarily, somebody that's just a sinister, bad person. And another kind of difference is the way that you're introduced to her and Larry. The whole format is very different in the series from the book. But the way that you're introduced to them, they're already on the road together. Larry has this whole leaving of New York, and it does kind of flash back to that a little bit. But the first time that you meet them in the series, they're already together and, kind of on the road together.
Right. And, yeah, I'm sure all of those, like, people coming together is very condensed in the series versus the book. But speaking of a couple sentences ago, sinister evil person, should we talk about Harold?
Yes.
What a character. Do you want to talk a little bit about Harold?
Yeah, so Harold, and I guess to talk about Harold, we kind of have to talk about Franny a little bit too. They both come from the same town in Maine. They're, their relation there is Franny's best friend is Harold's older sister. So Franny, she's seen Harold before, when she comes over to her friend's house and whatnot, but he's been kind of the younger, obsessive little brother that, kind of wants her attention, but, she's not really interested in all of that. So Harold, they kind of give Harold more credit than he deserves in the intro. He is kind of portrayed as this guy that comes up with a plan. He sees what's going on. He kind of gets Franny out of this depression. She's tried to commit suicide, and he swoops in and saves the day. None of that happens in the book.
Really? Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's a
So
big part of the series.
right. The book is very, very different in that part. Again, number one, it shows this whole kind of the pandemic happening. Franny has to deal with the people around her dying, all of this. That part goes on. Her father passes. Franny knows that she's pregnant from the get-go. She actually has a boyfriend. She's just found out that she's pregnant when all of this starts, and over a matter of just a few weeks, everybody dies. But either way, with Harold, he is first found after everybody dies by her. She realizes that he's the only one left in town. She's walking around and she hears grass being cut. So he's out mowing his grass. In the book, he's like a chubby kid. I think he's even gotten picked on in school for being chubby. And throughout the progression of their walk west, he actually does lose weight and become more normal. It acknowledges that, later once he gets to Boulder. But he's there kind of obsessively mowing the grass, and she decides that, what, I can't leave him behind. I'm going to have to help him. And he's going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to help him.
So it's really her trying to help him out versus like in the series, it's so much about him really manipulating her. They kind of portray him almost as this like a Patrick Bateman something American Psycho kind of character.
He is very smart. It's just that he doesn't come in and hero save her, from committing suicide. It's kind of the other way around. He's depressed and she catches him. But now his character in the book, he is very smart. He does have an obsession with Franny the whole time. He at first he thinks he's won the lottery, like, hey,
I'm the last man on earth.
Yeah, hey, that's how it's going to be. And then of course, they meet Stu Redman, and Stu is, everything that he is not.
Right.
And even though Franny she's not really interested in trying to find a guy right now, he is very interested in making sure that he's got the clasp on her. Like, she's not going to try to find the guy. She's going to be with me. Yeah. And so that obsession does take him over. And the harder he presses on it, the more she kind of pushes back.
Yeah.
And at one point, he actually, she's sleeping and he steals her journal, and he's been eating a payday candy bar, and his thumbprint gets stuck on the page of the journal.
Oh.
And he puts it back up, and they, she's still sleeping. She doesn't catch him. And then later on, she finds that thumbprint, and she realizes
he's obsessed
what it is. And and goes, this, I don't know for sure, but I really know that he has looked at this behind my back, and now he knows that I have had relations with Stu Redman.
Oh,
they
man.
were kind of keeping that on the low at first, but then she finds out that he's seen her journal, and he knows. So and he does in the book as well, try to put on a facade of, I'm not going to show everybody that I'm upset with Stu Redman. I'm going to, really try to be nice and supportive and smile on my face kind of guy. But,
I have to make one complaint about a casting thing, and that is so and not that they're both not great actors, because they are, but so James Marsden plays Stu Redman and Odessa Young plays Franny Goldsmith, and Odessa Young is 23 years old. She's she's 6 years younger than I am. Look at me. And
Right.
James Marsden is about to turn 50. And I know he looks great for his age, but I am always like slightly bothered by like casting choices like that, of just like these like much older men. They're like, yeah, we're gonna cast a 23-year-old to be your romantic partner. And then like I'm watching all their intimate scenes and I'm just like, oh no.
Right, right.
But I will say I think they are both well cast. I really liked Odessa Young as Franny. She just has like a quality about her that she feels like a real person to me. Like she doesn't really feel like an actor or something. Like she's very authentic or something. So
Right.
I did like that. Um, oh, and another thing I wanted to say about Harold, sorry, going back, is at the end they really focus. So he's kind of there also. I mean, it's a lot of stereotype of like crazy young guy. Like he's making plans in his basement, whatever. But at the end, when he's dying and he's writing this like last journal entry or something, being like, it was all of my own free will. And I thought that was very interesting, because I think a lot of this show is about like do you have to do these things that this evil force is asking of you, or do you have a choice? um and some people kind of like Nadine, like it kind of feels like she doesn't, and Harold like has done all these really bad things, and at the end like almost seems sort of remorseful in some way, but still wants like the world to know that like it was his choice to do them, um which I think is kind of part of that bigger idea of good versus evil in this, of like good versus evil, but we also make our own choices on where we're going to go. um
Right.
are you going to go to Boulder, or are you going to go to Vegas?
Well, I think that you know he really does he really does portray the human weapon. That's
Mm,
one of the things that is really kind of cool here. So he is the character that he is, you know, and part of it is because of the circumstances, everything that's happened. If life would have been normal, maybe he wouldn't have ended up this way. But it kind of shows him as somebody that is about to snap. And the dark man, Randall
mhm.
Flagg, he knows that. He can sense
Yes.
that and can sense that, hey, this is, a weapon, a tool that I can pull out of my drawer and use. So,
Absolutely. Which is so scary, right? It's like,
right.
ugh.
And of course, what people believe in sometimes, can drive them to do things that, you know, that can give them a lot more motivation than
Yeah.
they might normally have without. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Like without that influence, maybe they would, get over it or something.
right, Randall Flagg really kind of energizes uh, all of that negativity in anybody that he gets around, and that's what he's trying to draw as many people as he can to him and to his
Hmm.
force. So Harold he sees as a tool that is on the wrong side of the fence, and he's gonna use him while he's over there, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah. Something else I thought this series and maybe book did as well with the good versus evil is that I thought was that I'm kind of thinking about now. I'm thinking about like the Vegas stuff. It's like violence, sex, drugs, drinking, people, everyone's for some reason wearing leather. It's
Vegas.
like, yeah, it's very visually exciting and whatever. And I think it's interesting that all of these things are kind of lumped in as evil, and then on the good side it's like family and community and all this stuff. um but I thought it was interesting because some of those things, like Not that I really want to discuss sex on YouTube with my brother, but I think it's interesting that like things like that, or even like the fashion, things like that, like they've put like this brand on of as those are the evil things, which I don't know. I'm not sure. Like maybe in our modern day, we would agree that like things aren't so black and white, I guess.
Yeah.
But I thought it was it's very visually fun, of course, for the show to have all those things going on. It's like insane.
Right.
But I don't know. It was just something I was thinking about.
Well, they do use that a lot, that type of flair a lot, which does, that does coincide with what's in the book as well. One kind of thing to note is that when Nadine decides to, well, she doesn't really decide to. She doesn't really have a choice. She meets with Randall Flagg in the desert, and in the series, it kind of makes it more seem like she's just wanting to do this. She's okay with doing it, and so on and so forth. And she does kind of have an attraction to him, but at the same time, she's just as scared of him.
Yeah.
But in the book, he's definitely, it's definitely more of a rape than like a, night in the desert.
Interesting.
And as that interaction is happening, she realizes that he is, like literally cold as ice,
Scary.
and is pretty much dead inside. And without going into a whole lot of details, that's how she, feels about that whole experience. And I don't,
That's so interesting.
and obviously they don't want to just show, something so terrible, on TV. So I kind of get why they tone down some of those things. But again, that kind of goes back to my point with Nadine, that she, she could be a decent person. She's been kind of caught in his net for a long time, and he's just, not going to let her go.
Like she's almost more of a victim in this than
correct.
Yeah, that's very interesting because in the show, I mean they do show the moment in which you see kind of his demon form during that encounter, but it's not so clear. Like the imagery that you just said of like him being cold and ice and like dead inside, like that is so much more chilling to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And
scary.
he actually, he kills her in the book. Whereas, she commits suicide in the series. And at the end of the day, it's not part of his plan for her to actually die. He is trying to get her to, to submit, not in a sexual way, but to his will, to the things that he's trying to do. And she is trying to, kind of get out of it at this point. And he, I think he winds up like slamming her into the glass, and she winds up bleeding to death or something like that. I'll have to look back up the specifics of how she dies, but there is a, kind of a key difference there too.
Yeah, but in the series, I'll say, other than, no offense to the makeup artist of this show, but her, like she was just heavily contoured, and I was like, you couldn't do a more like a better practical effect to show that she was like withering away. Like I thought it was like a little spooky Halloween ghost in the series. But I will say her falling out that window and smashing in the pool thingy was like one of those visually wild things in the series. Like I thought it was like amazing and very scary.
Well, and that is kind of, just like the, is it Stanley Kubrick? Am I saying his name right? That did The Shining. So that is not all that accurate to the book in a lot of ways, but the visuals that it created have been, very iconic for people over the years. And,
Right.
I do agree with you that her, jumping down and falling all the way down and all that, is definitely probably better for the big screen.
Sure. Yeah.
And probably, a little easier to get away with for a TV audience than what actually the book describes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So I'm coming to the end of my list of things to talk about. So is there anything else? So we've been talking for almost an hour now. So I feel like we've really gone pretty in depth on a lot of this, which is really fun. Is there any other big things you wanted to talk about, or how are you feeling?
So, well, I'll the the last thing that I'll kind of say, there are definitely some other differences in some of the characters, but most of them were portrayed very well in the series. The biggest thing that I didn't like about it is the format. So in the book, it is, kind of, it goes in chronological order. It, starts with an outbreak, and then a pandemic happens, everybody dies, the key characters live, they make a plan and decide what they're going to do, so on and so forth. And I feel like if they would have taken the same shots in the series and done everything in chronological order, that you probably could understand it better. That's where I feel like it was kind of confusing. I did understand a lot of it because I've read the book, but I felt like had I not read the book, I would be kind of wondering, what's going on here.
I'll say I was with you on that, particularly in like the first half of the series, with there's so much back and forth of the timeline. And it was a little difficult for me as someone that hasn't read the book at times to really know what was going on. But and by the time I got to know all the characters, I understood everything by the end. But I was thinking that particularly the first like 2 episodes, I was like, oh man, maybe I should have read the book. I'm like a little lost.
Well, there's definitely some movies and series that format is excellent for, and I get why they might try that, but with this, the story is already intricate enough, and kind of shuffling everything like that really can make it confusing. And I feel like if I had some advice for for anybody listening, I'd say do it in order, like the book did.
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing that I guess we haven't talked about that I have to mention is Tom Cullen's character.
Yeah.
So Tom Cullen has a big part in the book, and he does play a decent part in the series, but he is intellectually disabled. He's automatically paired with somebody who is also disabled, who is deaf and mute.
Yes.
This character is Nick Andros in the book, and that's I'm not sure who the actor's name is, but so he meets Nick Andros, and at first, it takes him a while to process that the person in front of him cannot speak and cannot hear what he's saying. And that interaction kind of lasts for a little bit, and he has to kind of stop and go through a process where it almost looks like he is having a seizure. He just kind of stops what he's doing and just kind of stares, but inside his mind things are clicking together. He puts together, oh, this guy, he actually can't talk, and he can't hear me. So, and then the other, problem here is he can't read. So Nick is used to surviving by writing on a notepad, telling people what he needs. and so that's not going to work. Nick actually, it doesn't show as much of his character either, and he's a big part of the book, and those two characters work together quite a bit. It shows Nick gets beat up in a bar and wakes up in the hospital after everybody's died, kind of like Resident Evil. He just kind of wakes up, the world's already gone, and there he is. And in the book, he gets beat up partly because he's deaf and mute.
Yeah.
But he actually goes to the sheriff and becomes friends with the sheriff. They jail up the people that attacked him, and the sheriff dies. Everybody dies of the disease, and some of the prisoners are the last ones, living. He actually cares for the guy that beat him up and took one of his eyes. So on top of being, deaf and mute, now he's lost one of his eyes too. So
it's horrible. Yeah, it's insane. And then yeah, and then I can't believe I didn't even bring up that character. You said Tom, right?
Tom Cullen, yes.
Tom Cullen. Because I thought one of the scariest moments of the whole series for me was when he's working in Vegas as like a body cleanup man, and that one woman from Boulder gives him that piece of paper that says "run" on it, because she knows that when they find out where he's from, they're going to kill him. And so she gives him this piece of paper that says "run," but he can't read. And so he figures out to ask, he sees the word somewhere else and asks someone, what does that word mean? Knowing it's the same word on his paper. And then he can figure it out. And I thought that was like that whole little side story of him trying to escape. I was like on the edge of my seat for that. I was like, I want him to survive.
Right. So he actually, they hypnotize him in the book to go by the moon cycle. When the moon is full, he will leave. He's supposed to go there, just act like himself, tell him that because of his disabilities, that the community of Boulder didn't want to have him. And so he goes and does all of that. But even before that, one of the things I wanted to kind of put in there is they don't meet together in a hospital. Nick Andros survives the virus. He actually lets the guy out of jail that hurt him. I think he's getting sick, but he hadn't died, so he lets him go his way. He leaves and goes to the next town. That's where he finds Tom Cullen, and they do meet another character, which is not as important, but a tornado comes at one point, and Tom Cullen actually can hear the tornado. He can kind of feel what's going on more, and so Nick doesn't understand what's going on. Tom Cullen grabs him, they go down in the basement, and he saves his life. Well, then at the end, flash all the way to the end, Tom Cullen, he does leave in the nick of time before they figure out kind of what he's doing, that he's a spy, and he does come back and save Stu, but what they don't show in the series is that their journey back is a whole it's a whole journey in itself, and they have to go, because they don't just hop in a car and drive from Vegas back to Boulder. Like, they have to go on foot quite a bit. Tom Cullen, thankfully, he is big and strong, and is able to kind of manhandle him and get him where he needs to go. But Stu is having to verbally tell and teach him how to do all these things, because he's got a broken leg, and he's fallen into that gorge. So that they get almost to Boulder, and then all the snow, like the first big snow of the year, hits, So they actually get hunkered down for like, several days in I think they stay in a gymnasium or something like that, or I can't remember what it is. It's in a little town, and they, they have to kind of stay together there. And that little part of the story is really cool because at the end of the book, everything is wrapping up. The book is a masterpiece from start to finish, how it all kind of ties together. But Stephen King uses Tom Cullen, a character that, something that Stephen King does often. He will take somebody that society might look at as, weak or, having all these special needs, and he will make that person,
A
use
hero.
those needs and become the hero.
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
the special key that fit into the lock to save the day.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that I had to kind of mention that because that's one of my favorite things about the book. And it does give credit, to Tom Cullen. He saves the day at the end there in the
Yeah.
series.
No, I'm
He-
so glad you brought that up because he's such a great character in the series too. So absolutely.
but
Oh,
yeah, that's pretty much. I think the between the book and the series, um, I'm almost nervous to comment on the book because it's been one of his most well-received books. There have been plenty of people that have read it, multiple times and are much better experts than I. So I hope I haven't blundered anything. Uh,
don't
but
worry. I always accidentally lie on the Horror Movie Club constantly by saying false information, and somebody in the chat will always correct me. So I'm
right,
sure we
right,
will get the
right.
same.
Yeah, so all of my friends in the constant readers group, I hope to, share this there as well.
Yes, I
Um,
hope so. Yeah.
if I've said something that's not accurate, feel free to chime in, but be nice. I try my best.
Yes, we're all
I've read
trying
the
our
book.
best. Be nice in the comments, all that.
I've read the book once, but at 1,200 pages, I will probably read it again before I die. But it is a lot to
It's an
remember
endeavor.
all the different things that happen in it. But I did think overall CBS did a good job. As I do like to see the King adaptations, and kind of compare now that I've been reading the books. And so this one was great, and I think they did a good job.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you, Thomas, so much for coming on my channel for the first time. My first time having family on the channel. This
It's
was
been fun.
awesome. And thank you for all of your Stephen King knowledge. I'm sure everyone really has had a good time hearing all of that.
Yeah, I'm very low on the totem pole of Stephen King, but I'm very, very engaged in it. I love everything he does, and again, I can't recommend this book enough, and of course the series too.
Yeah. All right. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for watching and have a nice scream. Bye.